Greetings and welcome to another LGR Digicam thing, and this is the Panasonic SuperDisc Palm Cam, model PV-SD4090, which cost $900 when it began hitting store shelves in November of 1999, an eye-watering price for a digital camera in '99, especially one that didn't use flash storage or memory cards, but instead used floppy disks. Not your regular 1.44 meg floppies, though it can use those too, but its big selling point was its use of the SuperDisc format, also known as LS120, which, as implied by the name, boasts a 120 megabyte storage capacity, holding nearly 500 1280 by 960 resolution photos on a single disc. Yeah, this has 80 times the capacity of your typical high-density diskette, and even more than its main competitor, Iomega Zip disks, which at the time stored 20 megs less than a SuperDisc, and was oddly never used in a production digital camera. That said, how many average consumers actually knew of, much less used, SuperDiscs on a regular basis? Personally, I became aware of the format because of iMation's SuperDisc drives, the go-to USB disk drive that paired well with Apple's floppyless iMacs. But even then, like in school, I mostly saw the drives being used with regular old floppies. Actual LS120 SuperDiscs were a rare sight, especially compared to the ubiquitous Zip disk. For several reasons I won't focus on here, so check out the LS120 video on the channel This Does Not Compute. Colin did a great job covering the topic. Anyway, as you might expect, much of it came down to marketing, along with slower read-write speed and less than ideal launch timing. So why didn't Panasonic go with Zip disks instead? Well, that goes back to the delightfully named Floptical disc. Another odd format I need to cover someday, but yeah, for a time these things looked like they were going to become a thing. Years went by without them being much of a thing, so companies that were invested in the idea moved on to other things. Iomega went on to make their own Zip format, and Matsushita moved on to the Floptical-based SuperDisc. And since Panasonic was Matsushita's brand, it makes sense they'd use a format they manufactured themselves in one of their cameras. Actually, two cameras. The SD5000 was an obscure follow-up a year later, and that's what I wanted to cover originally, but I have yet to find a working example for sale. And these SuperDisc models were by no means Panasonic's only digital camera. They'd been in the game for half a decade by then, with some lovely mid-90s designs like the KXL600 and the DC1000, each with their own uniquely slim form factors that really made the Palm Cam branding make sense. Not so much with the 4090. It's a thick chunk and handful of a device approaching 2 pounds in weight, so calling it a Palm Cam seems like a stretch. Its girth actually outmeasures certain floppy disk cameras from Sony, even the Mavicas with bigger screens and longer lenses. So it ain't small, but its SuperDisc drive, that's the real killer feature, since it can use the same cheap 3.5-inch discs Mavicas used alongside 120 meg SuperDiscs. Being 2 drives in one was also an advantage over Zip drives, since those couldn't read regular floppies. And you don't even need a standalone drive, since the camera has USB, turning it into an external SuperDisc/floppy combo drive for both Mac OS and Windows PCs. And while these are easy to find on their own, an SD4090 in the box is notably less common, so I was stoked to find this nearly complete in box years back. It's missing the foam and cardboard organizer pieces that made it look tidy, but the original documents, discs, and accessories are all here, and that's the important stuff. Starting with an assortment of cables, including a composite AV cable, a USB 1.1 cable with one of those 4-pin mini connectors on the camera side, and a DC power cable that can power and charge the cam directly when passed through this AC adapter/battery charging dock. With the battery being a PVDBP5, a 1250 mAh lithium-ion pack that somehow still holds a full charge. Which is good, since when I got this I was banking on being able to use F330 type batteries you can easily find new, but nope. They aren't quite the same form factor and don't fit, so whatever, my quarter-century-old battery somehow did the trick. I eventually found modern replacements, but that was literally this afternoon, so I didn't get to use them for this video. Anyway, also in the box is this CD-ROM containing PalmCam drivers and software, along with copies of QuickTime and Adobe Photo Deluxe. Plus some paperwork like this registration card and the instruction manual with 75 black and white pages of detailed goodness covering every bit of the camera's features and functionality. I also love to see that the original buyer left their receipt in here too from when they purchased it from the Countryside Mall Sears in Clearwater, Florida on February 26, 2002 for $399. It also came with a Panasonic SuperDisc, though as mentioned, most were manufactured by Panasonic regardless of branding. Like those marketed and sold by iMation, the most common SuperDisc brand, and these could be had for around $15 a piece, often sold in bundles of 3, which considering that equates to roughly 250 high-density floppies and 64 megabyte compact flash cards cost $180, SuperDiscs were a dang bargain. You just had to pay the current equivalent of $1,700 for the camera itself, an unthinkable amount to pay for a Digicam back then from my view, but now it's a bargain-priced geeky pleasure. Just listen to that mechanism doing its thing. As with Sony Mavicas, you get those lovely drive noises and mechanical schlunkiness with the discs, including the feeling of motors whirring in your hands as you use it. I like it a lot. And on that note, using it is really straightforward. On front are the rubber grips, light sensor and self-timer LED, the flash, and lens assembly. With a built-in mechanical lens cover opening up to reveal the 5.2 to 15.6mm zoom lens, with its 35mm equivalent being 34 to 102mm. It's autofocus only, with an f-stop of 2.8 to 4.7 and a 1.3 megapixel CCD sensor inside, snapping images up to 1280 by 960 in resolution. Along with video, technically. This mono microphone on top handles audio for the 320 by 240 QuickTime clips it can record. Also up top is the 2-stage shutter button, along with this control wheel for powering it on and engaging one of 4 recording and playback modes. On bottom is a tripod mount and the battery bay with a well-constructed latching door. Then there's the SuperDisc drive with motorized eject on one side and a rubber flap on the other side that opens to reveal USB, AV out, and power connectors. And of course, the most action happens around back with a sliding zoom switch, a speaker, activity LEDs, D-pad and function keys, and 2.5-inch TFT color LCD. It functions as the camera's only viewfinder, as well as letting you change the majority of settings and manual adjustments, like timers, flashes, shutter speed, ISO, white balance and metering, audio options, the clock, and so on, as well as changing into video mode, and even a time-lapse option. And of course, playback mode for reviewing photos and video clips. Slowly but surely, that SuperDisc drive is faster than a normal floppy drive, but it still tops out around 565 kbps. So everything takes a moment, from booting up to saving a photo to viewing media, and even taking a picture is a bit sluggish since you have to hold down the shutter and wait for it to focus, adjust exposure, and balance color before it'll take a pic and save to disk. It's slow, but nothing too dire, and once you're used to its particular breed of lethargy, it's an engaging camera to use from back then. A lot of it due to the photo's sheer early aughts energy, that washed out, slightly soft turn the millennium look it gives everything, along with its lighter shadows, muted colors, and a somewhat grainy, stippled texture applied to everything. It's a delightful throwback if you're into such things, and I absolutely am, more and more as time marches on. But also that 3x optical zoom, it's no slouch. I love a zoom lens in this range, 30 to 100mm or thereabouts, especially for bumming around a city and capturing things that are well within sight, but not close enough for the naked eye to fully appreciate the details. And for a 25-year-old digital camera with a lens about as big around as a nickel, the PalmCam does an admirable job. I hauled it around all over the place when my brother Luke and I visited New York recently, and it held up surprisingly well for a disk drive camera of its age. Honestly, I'm just stoked the drive is currently still working perfectly, and the old battery somehow lasted for a couple hours of shooting per charge. Maybe these were just well built, maybe I got really lucky, but either way, I had a lot of fun shooting with it around Manhattan. And also in Garden City, where we were guests at Long Island Retro Gaming Expo 2024, held within the excellent Cradle of Aviation Museum. Well, excellent in terms of being a unique venue, less so in terms of quality lighting, or just lights at all. The place is quite dim, which led to more than a few photographic failures when shutter and ISO simply couldn't compensate for the low lighting. So before long I resorted to using the flash, which is fine, it simply added to the retro charm of the resulting pictures. And I took the opportunity to take as many selfies as I could with people who stopped by to hang out at the LGR table, so if you're in here then hey, thanks for stopping by, and thanks for agreeing to a selfie, which was enjoyably awkward as there's no way to see what we were shooting. I just had to stretch and position the camera as close to what felt like selfie range as possible and see how it goes. A skill I forgot I had, honestly, since it's all I ever did with selfies in high school until phones with front-facing cameras came along. I never had a fancy rotating screen or front-mounted mirrors on my cameras back then. It was try your best and see what happens. And as is tradition, I like to drive around the area back home and capture my go-to scenes for comparison, testing for dynamic range and color and different lighting to see what it can do. The results aren't bad at all for something from 1999, although the white balance is constantly off in a predictable way, almost always opting for a cooler color temperature than things appear in real life. You can adjust it manually to a degree, but it's a clunky interface and retracts a bit from the fun. Likewise for exposure, it tends to underexpose if there is anything less than direct sunlight. And if it's anywhere near dawn or dusk, good luck. Like with this Porsche parked at sunset, the camera struggled to capture its bright orange essence in auto mode, but adjusting the iris control allowed me to closer match reality. It just added another 30 seconds to shooting time. So in most cases, I'm happy to just let it do its thing and see what comes through. In flatly lit scenes with enough light, it's fine. I take this shot of Chicken Alley and compare it to my phone, and you can see what I mean in terms of how it handles color and shadow. Wider ranges of lighting and color is its downfall, like with this sunset. It was one of the most vibrant all week, yet you really can't tell on the palm cam. The dynamic range is blah, and all those deep oranges and yellows are nearly non-existent. Skin tones are also often quite pink, especially if you're a pink person like myself, but really, a lot of things look kinda bluish pink, no matter what, which, whatever. It all adds to the look that you arguably want from a digital camera this age. That photographic time machine effect is in full force with the palm cam, particularly when shooting a subject that was around back in the day. Even dick pics have that distinctive late 90s flair to them. It's good stuff. As for the video, it's functional, I'll give it that much. In video mode, you hold down the shutter and it records as long as the buffer holds up, which is 10 seconds max, but often less. Though I really like how the viewfinder immediately shows the choppy results as it compresses on the fly. And the resulting recordings, yeah, it's rough, dude. I've had roasted trail mix with less crunchiness. At least it has sound you can almost decipher. Better than nothing.
There we go. It goes into like 1990s GIF mode. Nice. Oh yeah, it's cluttered.
As for the software side of things, I have good news. With onboard USB, all you have to do is plug into a USB supporting OS, and you're likely good to go. I plugged it into a Mac Studio here, and it was detected and working straight away, functioning as an external drive for both SuperDiscs and normal floppies alike. This being LGR though, I also had to give the original Windows 9X experience a try, and well, drivers are simple and the software is basic. Panasonic didn't include a photo transfer utility, but it's not needed as the OS treats the cam as a standard floppy drive. What it did come with is Adobe Photo Deluxe, the predecessor to Photoshop Elements. It lets you do all the usual adjustments, from rotating to color correction to resizing to sharpening and so on, and in 1999 this was a solid bonus considering many folks didn't have a decent image editor at all yet. Or QuickTime for that matter, particularly on Windows. So all around, no complaints on the software front. But the best part is not needing any of it. The camera is good to go on its own. Unfortunately, there's no way to use it as a USB webcam since the interface allows for file transfers from the disk drive, and that's it. Even through the AV output jack, you can't view the live feed. But you can at least play back what you've already taken, and yes, video quality is still terrible over composite on a CRT. The softness only helps so much with video this bad. And that's the Panasonic SuperDisc Palm Cam, a camera I got strictly for its unusual storage and ended up enjoying more the more I used it. Being able to store so many full-quality photos on a single disc is fantastic. I would have been disc swapping in New York constantly if I was using a Mavica. And the fact you can easily plug it into any modern computer with USB counts for a lot. It's the best of two worlds. You get the retro appeal of a 1999 digital camera, but the novelty of a whirring disk drive with tons of space and easy transfers. If it was only a bit slimmer, I'd say it's one of the best Y2K era digital cameras I've used. And being a USB SuperDisc drive all on its own makes it easy to recommend since it's one less obstacle in the way. Obviously, later Mavicas had USB connectivity too, but they're still stuck with 1.44 meg floppies. Even specially formatted ones that double a floppy's capacity pale in comparison to 120 megs on a disk. These Palm Cams are also plentiful and cheap, so if you're looking for a digital camera from the era with a good zoom lens to lug around, I'd recommend picking one up. It might not be pocket-sized, but it isn't too much of a hassle to use and is still a fun experience decades later. And if you enjoyed this Digicam retrospective, then do check out some of my others. I've done a good number over the years, and other vintagey retro kind of topics are always in the works here on LGR, so stick around if you'd like. And as always, thanks for watching.